Hello folks, good evening. It's May 17th, 2019. Welcome to channel Where Do You Win Eddie? One day I'll tell you guys what that means, unless you can guess. I don't think you can, but you can give it a go. There's an incredible story behind that, and it's out there. That's why I figured it out, and I'm using it as my channel name. But there is a relationship in the names, and well, I'll tell you later. Or you can figure out clues. I'll sprinkle here and there in my videos and see whether or not somebody comes up with it before I disclose what it is. Anyhow, last videos I discussed the solar chart, a grand solar cycle of 304 years, and with the 165-year gap of where the temperature drops considerably. But my other chart is much better than this. This was my first chart where I was just drawing it freehand, and then my next video after that I showed the data set where I was getting it from and made it a little cleaner. But the first video is still good to watch, so I'm leaving it up. And I also discussed different coins that I had found. Well, I didn't find them, but they're on the internet, that I thought resembled the moon. The dark spots, the moon, I believe is called the Maria, and I figured this is where they got their ideas. Alexander Great's time coin, and this is one that I had found much earlier. I printed this off, a couple years back when I first kind of got the idea that it might be resemblance of the moon, with the guy here, his hand on the knee, just looking like the moon, being a coin, moony, and the idea that the coins that was paid to Roman soldiers were called solders. Yeah, it's hard to find that anywhere on the internet. You can look and you can find it eventually, but it's not the first thing that comes up on the etymology of soldier. But there you have it. And there's a number of other things I've found since then as I do a little research here and there. Like things that are in plain sight. It's like it's hidden in plain sight, but I don't know. Maybe it's just my opinion, but you tell me what you think. When I looked up the history of Pitch Lake, well, you can look it up too. You don't have to, trust that this is an actual article from Wikipedia. You just look up history of Pitch Lake. And it says, since its discovery by Sir Walter Raleigh in his expedition there in 1595, and referred to the pitch as most excellent. So this is stuff, pitch is a material they used for, and it's like an asphalt they used for the ships, to caulk their ships to keep it from leaking. But it's funny that you look up the history of Raleigh, North Carolina. And you see there's a research triangle there, and there's some. Okay, and I looked up Tar Heel because it sounded very familiar to what I read about the Pitch Lake. It's being like a tar. And then we've got the Tar Heels of North Carolina. And it says the exact etymology of the nickname is unknown, but most folklore believe its roots came from the fact that tar, created from the vast pine forest, were some of North Carolina's most important exports early in the state's history. Well, it's kind of funny to think, that they believed all the tar was from there, when the Walter Raleigh had his expedition over at Pitch Lake, where he got all the tar for his ships. And the very interesting thing that I believed was the idea of tar heels was the location of Pitch Lake. If you look at the map, well, it looks like it's at the heel of a little boy. Like if you make the Gulf of Mexico into like a little infant baby, like that's the baby's head, and you can see its hands up and you know its body, and where its heels would be where the Pitch Lake is, right at the heel. So, you know, perhaps that was the El Nino that was discussed, you know, in ancient times. The little boy acting up. El Nino could have been that same little boy of Gulf of Mexico, but that seems to be lost in history. I can't find that anywhere, but just like, you know, this coin. Okay, so also in prior videos I spoke about people's mind directly and influence of Geiger counters, and I think that that others are able to do it as well, to greater or lesser degrees, and probably depending on the environment, maybe even depending on solar activity. They say, like with ham radio operators can project further off the atmosphere during increased solar activity. I don't understand how it works. It didn't seem like it was all that complicated, but at the same time, you know, it may be similar. That's why you have to, you know, investigate all environmental factors, and that includes the solar activity, or your radon readings, your humidity levels, you know, around your house, you know, because it's humid here, and this is in the southeast, so it's mostly humid during this time of the year, and there's fairly high radon readings, as there is across much of the U.S. It's just naturally high. So maybe with those two factors, and perhaps an internal factor, you know, maybe you know, something with me, you know, which it either allows it to happen at greater distances, or maybe my awareness is just greater, where I just notice it, maybe other people wouldn't notice it, or just throw it off as coincidence and never again, because it's so easy to throw it off as a coincidence. I did the same thing. I said, this can't be possible, but I'm also stubborn. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep trying. I'm going to get more Geiger counters from different manufacturers. I'm going to get electromagnetic readers, just to see whether or not it's an EMP type thing, or if it's RF readings. These things tell everything, but the Geiger counters, they have the alarms, and they seem to be the most sensitive. I can't really determine anything with the EMF readers, but the people that ghost hunt and that kind of stuff, you know, they swear by the EMF readers. So what I think is they're probably having a similar effect, you know, on the readers as I may with the Geiger counters. Whereas when they get surprised, or when they're getting enthusiasm or the suspense up, they're setting off the detector, and then they're thinking, well, it must be something that's happening outside of me that's causing that detector. But it could very well be them, or a group of them, you know, maybe thinking the same thing at the same time. There's some sort of communication. You know, the world is weird. But so as far as a catastrophe cycle is concerned, I don't think a person has to really look much further than their own backyard in a lot of cases, because it's something that would be very difficult to hide, and especially if it happened on a regular basis. But it's simple to confuse things enough. And you mix words around where even the same languages will be, where one word will mean the absolute opposite, or have dual meanings. And so translations will always be able to be whatever you want it to be. And one thing, like I've noticed, like with the rocks, like I was saying, in your own backyard. I'm looking at my own backyard. So let me pull up a few rocks just to get started, because I have so many more. These are just some handheld ones I could just pick up real quick, and I'm not even sure if it'll really come out. But these are quite interesting on how they seem to just be like organic. And some are just like charred, like something just burned them to a crisp. But there's others that just look like, large bone fragments. They say there were quite a bit of large giant sloths in this area, and who knows how long ago that was. I mean, we're told certain years, but I remember growing up, I always believed that horses and camels, came from other places and then came to here. But it seems like it turns out it's the other way around. They were here and they went to the other places and then got extinct here, and then was brought back here from the Far East. And who knows how long it's been since our Camelot has had camelops, as they were called. But here's another one. And it seems like a piece of petrified wood. It's extraordinarily heavy, but it really looked like a bark on the outside here, and then it's got these like axe marks on the sides. I'm not sure if it's going to pick it up on the camera, but I've seen enough of these to wonder, how long does it take for a piece of wood to turn into something like this? And it's you can see how at one time it was nicely cut and super flat bottom edges, and it sits like a little pedestal, flat. And anyhow, that got me to thinking, what's the oldest tree here? Well, the oldest trees aren't that old. The vast majority of the trees, of the oldest trees, are only about 300 years old. Now, you go further west and further north, you'll find some that's claimed to be a lot older. And there might be some that are a lot older, because the way I see it is, if there was a big blast, whether it was a giant comet, or quite a number of comets, or whatever, or they'd be meteors if they hit the Earth, I guess, but meteorites. So I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing thing. Like if you have a big solar blast or whatever kind of blast, if it's raining real hard somewhere and the clouds are extremely thick and dense, well, perhaps that's protecting those areas. perhaps those areas aren't the ones that are going to burn down. So you might have some trees that survive a couple of these cycles, maybe 10 of them. You know, maybe you could survive 10 theoretically, and then you have a 3,000-year-old tree. I mean, the Earth is spinning, so if it happens, you know, in one big blast every 300 years, well, and we know that the Earth is 71% surface area of water, so you're not going to get a whole area every time. You're only getting 71%. Well, if it's Earth facing and it's only just one, you know, blast, one like that just lasts for like an hour or whatever, then the Earth hasn't turned enough, so you only hit 50% of the Earth anyways. But the 50% of the Earth side that you hit could have been mostly water. So you're only hitting a small part of the land. Anyways, I'm sure you can visualize that, even though I didn't say it perfect. It's an asteroid tracker app. Well, it also tracks X-rays, solar X-rays, and I noticed that it's still showing for today as registering X-rays coming from the sun. And I looked back through history, through all of the history. Well, I went back to 2012. I didn't keep going further than that. But the last several years, it has never shown X-rays happening past May the 16th. It'll get really close to the 17th, but only this year, only today, has it ever went past the 16th. So I don't know what that means. I don't know at all. I know that it was really high earlier this month. We were in the red for the first few days of May, on and off for several days of May. And then we're down, so it's still at the minimum, but it's not at zero. And I would expect it to be zero. I mean, if we're going to say that the prior years are any indication of where it should be. But I don't know. I'm just telling you what I see, and we'll see if that turns out to be any kind of significant. I just spotted, you know, my telescope over here, and this is a real cheapy telescope. I bought it off of Craigslist from somebody else who didn't even know what they had. They were selling it because they bought a whole storage shed full of stuff. You know, somebody had not paid for the storage shed, so they were one of those people, and they sold this telescope for like $50, and I got a little solar filter put on it, you know, a little like flimsy film that from Amazon for like $10. Put it on there, and I've been checking out the sun. I thought it was because I had a cheap solar filter or cheap telescope that I never could see sunspots, but this last week I seen the two big ones that just came through. I didn't see the ones before. Now, I don't know why, but I take it that they weren't nearly as big. They must not have been big enough. But when I look at the images provided by NASA, well, they look very similar, you know, on their site, you know, as far as what's big and what's, I mean, as far as the diameter of what they were showing. Well, the ones that just went by was pretty big. It had to be. Because I was able to see two of them. Now I only see one of them. I guess one of the others is already on the making its way to the other side, or has just collapsed. But my thought is that in 27 more days we're going to see it again. I think that when the sun turns, it takes 27 days for a rotation. And I counted it out. I said, well, okay, so today's the 16th. And it's on its tail end away now, so it'll be less than 27 days before it starts. But we know that 27 days from today ends up being around the 10th. So somewhere between the 8th and the 10th will be the days of another solar event, most likely. Now it could collapse. It could collapse and there could be nothing. But if something's going to happen, if there's going to be another big event, okay, so if you're not familiar with this last few days of the solar cycle, of the solar events, well, it went up pretty high. It was a KP7, and we hadn't had a KP7 event in I don't know, some number of years. It's been a while. So if we're going to have another one of those or higher, it's going to happen somewhere between the 8th and the 10th of June. And I looked at the calendar, and my calendar says that it's a Jewish holiday. And you know, I find that interesting because of some of the other stuff I mentioned, you know, about Jewish holidays and the Jewish tradition and missing dates, the missing years. I mentioned that 165 was the coldest part. I found, you know, that they also mentioned it in the Jewish calendar, missing years in the Jewish tradition. It's a Wikipedia article, and where Shimon Schwab points the words, seal the words and close the book. The book of Daniel is a positive commandment to obscure the calculation for the Messiah mentioned within, so that the true date of the Messiah's arrival would not be known. But of course, you know, he withdrew the suggestion later. But you know, I'm not saying it's another coming of Messiah. I mean, you know, everybody can believe what they want. I mean, you know, it could be, I guess. But you know, I'm just saying that that something happens, and it could be such a big event that you could say it was, you know, a Messiah. But it is weird that it happens on between the two dates of the Shavuot, which idly begins at sunset, and on the 10th it ends at nightfall. And that'll be the same with what happens with the solar sunspot when it comes around. Well, I think the event, the greatest chance of the KP index being high will be between the 8th and the 10th of June. So you might want to write that down, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Well, I try to make my videos less than 30 minutes. I may have ran a little bit further this time, but I hope you guys, you know, are, you know, entertained with nothing else. But yeah, feel free to comment or subscribe, like the video, because hey, if I just get 0 likes, and my motivation to continue is diminished. So, but I do want to get the information out regardless, and I will be showing more of these rocks that I have in my backyard later. I just don't have enough time. You know, like I said, I want to keep my videos short as possible, and it'll take a long time to show all those carved rocks and whatnot that I've got. And that'll be in a few days. Subscribe and you'll get notified if you hit the notify button. All right, well, thanks for watching, and until next time, Milas and Verba.